Welcome to the next lesson in the pivot table course. This time we are going to cover pivot charts. And before we start, let me just remind briefly that if you have a simple worksheet and a normal cell range in Excel, like for example the region column with south and north and some kind of value like 1 and 2, it's quite easy to insert a chart just by selecting the data you have and hitting insert a specific chart. And this is how you create normal charts using normal data ranges. And the characteristic thing about this kind of charts is that they are defined by the data range, which is split into series. In my case, this is the values, and also into categories, which in my case are the region names. This is how you usually insert charts inside normal worksheets, but we are going to analyze right now data in a bit different charts, which are called pivot charts. And it's even much easier to insert a chart like this based on a pivot table, because when you create a pivot table, the data range will be generated automatically by a pivot table. So let's start by inserting a pivot table, although you could actually start already by inserting pivot chart or pivot chart and pivot table. We will start just by pivot table, and we will create the following scenario. Product category on rows and sales on values shelf. This is the standard pivot table we have, and right now to create a pivot chart on top of that, you need to select any of the cells inside your pivot table so that Excel exactly knows what is going to be the data source for the pivot table. And then you just go for the insert and choose a specific chart, or you can also click see all charts icon or recommended charts, whatever you wish. We will start by creating the simple two-dimensional clustered column chart. So you can see already in the preview that it's going to create a simple column chart with 3 categories as the x-axis. The nice thing about this pivot charts is that they are all the time tied to the source table. So if you filter something in the source pivot table, either by filters or by slicers or by whatever filtering mean we discovered in the previous lesson, it's always going to react with the chart. You can also filter the data straight also from the pivot chart itself. The difference is that if you hit select data from under the right click, you cannot change the data range. It's like all the time the source table you have, but the source table excluding all grand totals and subtotals if there are any. So you can see that the grand total isn't represented anyhow in this pivot chart. When your pivot table is selected, you can see standard shelves we discovered through this course, which is rows and columns. But as soon as you select the chart itself, you will see that the rows shelf is changed into categories, which is the axis right now, and the columns shelf is changed to legend, which is responsible for different series. So right now, if I want to analyze the data by region, instead of placing this field on the columns shelf, I actually place it on the legend shelf, although in a pivot table you still will see the columns shelf as usual. You can always change the chart type you selected either by right clicking and changing the chart type, or by selecting the chart itself and selecting another chart from the list of the charts you have on the ribbon, or by going to the all charts window where you can select a different chart. And right now we are going to select the stacked column chart because I would like to see all of the regions on top of each other represented of course by colors. Is there any difference between this kind of charts and normal charts that you use in normal Excel? There were already few that I mentioned, but one additional is that you, for example, cannot add additional data series to this kind of chart. It always will refer to only what you have inside your pivot table. The second difference that I can right now spot immediately is that I don't get any title, which by default should appear in normal charts, but by using the plus icon, or in the previous Excel versions by using some other places on ribbon, you can add the chart title, of course, and change the title to sales for product category. Another difference is that on a pivot chart, you always see this kind of gray buttons, gray icons about the fields you have. You can keep them because they are actually filters for the end users, but if you don't like them and you will prefer, for example, filtering by slicers, you can always turn them off to make this chart appear in a similar way as the normal Excel charts. You can turn them off by right-clicking any of the fields and saying hide or value field buttons or all of the field buttons on a chart. And if you do so, you can right now see just a simple Excel chart without any additional icons. It's quite hard to bring these buttons back. The only place where you can do it is the pivot chart analyze tab, where you can bring back the field buttons on a chart. Let's do the last thing as regards formatting, which is similar for all of the Excel charts. Let's just place the legend on top to make it easier for the audience to read the legend next to the title. This is it for this exercise. See you in the next lesson.